Hi everyone, I'm Imogen from Course Report. We are a resource for researching which coding bootcamp is right for you. We have a directory of different coding schools, a blog, and interviews with founders, instructors, and students, all to help you work out which bootcamp you want to go to. Today, I'm speaking with BrainStation UX student Zack, who is going to tell us a bit about his background, then demo his favorite bootcamp project for us. He's going to share his screen with us so we can see exactly how it works and how he designed it. So Zack, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
So maybe we can start and you can tell me a bit about your career and education background and how your path led you to go to a UX design bootcamp.
Yeah, sure. So previous to going to a bootcamp, I was a front-end developer, and I had been doing front-end development for about 10 years of my career. I always kind of worked in hybrid roles, so I was kind of doing a lot of UX already in addition to front-end work. And so I guess over time, closer to, 10 years later kind of thing, I think I started to really think about the work that I really enjoyed doing. And I realized that all the really positive parts of my career was when I was like hopping in to do design work or doing actual user experience work. And so I think I got to a point where I was like, okay, maybe I need to refocus my career. And so I felt like I could move into a UX role without going back to school. But the thing that was really difficult was I guess there's two things. I didn't have a formal diploma in user experience. I had a diploma in web design and development, but that was from 10, 12 years ago or something. So I really wanted to brush up to bring things a little bit more current. But also I didn't have any work to show. Being in hybrid roles, it's a little bit tricky because you don't really have solid UX work. So I really wanted to dive in and like really immerse myself in that world. And then at the end of it, kind of get a diploma and have something to show for it. So yeah, that's kind of where I went.
Awesome. And so then what made you choose BrainStation as a way to get those skills, like rather than another bootcamp or another program that you might have come across?
Yeah, so I had set out some really solid goals for myself last year in terms of career. And one of them was I wanted to, not just in terms of career, but one of my big goals was I wanted to move to Los Angeles. And I was applying for development jobs at the time. And for that, you needed like an engineering degree, which I did not have. So I started looking at, okay, so if I want to move to Los Angeles, what can I do? And I was looking at, a big part of that was like, okay, well, what if I start applying for design roles? And for design roles to get a visa, you still need a diploma at least, right? So that was a big decision, or a big factor in my decision. I believe BrainStation was the only bootcamp that gives a diploma, like a certified diploma. So that was a huge thing in my decision.
Awesome. That's so cool. And so once you'd made that decision, what was the application and interview process like for the BrainStation diploma?
Yeah, so it was pretty straightforward. So I spoke to, I believe, a few administration people, and they kind of just did like a quick conversation just to see where I was at in terms of skills, to see if this was like going to be the right program for me. Maybe the part-time course would be better. Like they have a few different offerings there. So the full-time is definitely like more immersive, and so they wanted to make sure that that was going to be a good fit. So I kind of spoke with them. After that, they sent over, I believe, a design challenge just to kind of see if I could understand the basics of user experience. I believe that was kind of the goal of it. So I had a few days to kind of do that test or that challenge and then send it back. And then within a few days after that, they let me know that I had been accepted.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you tell me a bit about your cohort? Like,
Sure.
What were the other people like? How many people were there? And how kind of diverse was it?
Yeah, so the cohort was really great. It was the thing that was really interesting was actually it was a bit of an anomaly. We were a very small cohort. I think typically there was. I'm trying to think of how many. It's like apart from the cohort that I was in, what it averages, but I can't remember. But ours was about 15 people, so it was very small and very close knit. Like it was really great because it was so small, we really kind of bonded really tightly. In terms of how diverse it was very diverse. We had people from all backgrounds, like all different career paths, all ages, all races, all everything. Like, it was very diverse. And that's such a great way to learn. You have so many different perspectives coming into the room. And that was an amazing part of the process as well.
That's awesome. And then what was the actual learning experience like at BrainStation? Like, maybe you can tell me about a typical day and the sort of teaching style.
Yeah. So a typical day, kind of, we would all meet in the morning, and we would do, I can't remember what they call it, but we usually did like half an hour of kind of like a warm up kind of thing, where we would do like smaller design kind of work, just to kind of like work, maybe like a form redesign, or just some like really kind of simple stuff to kind of get us in that headspace. Other days we would kind of also do maybe a physical warm up. So our instructor would sometimes lead stretches, or kind of just, get up and kind of get moving around kind of things, which were really, really beneficial. It just kind of gets you that focus. So after we would lead those, we would move into lectures and labs and workshops. So some of the lectures would kind of go for most of the morning, and then sometimes into the afternoon. And then oftentimes we were left with lab time at the end of the day, so we could work on our like capstone project, or some of our other work. The thing that's really interesting too is that there is, like, I think going into this, a lot of people forget, me specifically, especially forgot that school is a very intensive place, especially a boot camp, right? And so the expectation is that you do the work, 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever it was. But also when you're done school during the day, you go home and you're doing more work, right? So for me, I totally forgot that homework was a part of school. And so the first week they're like, here's your homework. And I was kind of like, what? It's like, oh, right, school has homework. So yeah, it's very intensive. And so the day didn't just stop at 6, it continues into the evening as well.
Wow, yeah, that sounds intense, but
it's very intense.
Good. Yeah. And so with your background in UX, what kind of new things did you learn at BrainStation that you didn't already know?
So I think a couple of things. A big thing was the end-to-end process. I think I mentioned this earlier, like, as being in hybrid roles, you don't really get exposed to, and maybe like in a lot of UX roles, like doing the full end-to-end process, I think is not common. I think sometimes it maybe depends on where you work, but kind of going through that full spectrum of, establishing a problem space, doing the research, doing your user interviews, and kind of taking that all the way into like wireframes and doing user testing, and then into your high fidelities. I think that was such an amazing experience to actually go through that full end-to-end process. And I think that was something that I really took away from the course.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And were you building projects throughout the program? And were there lots of different ones?
Yeah, so there was always something that you were working on. And so the big project that you're working on is your capstone project. And so that's the big one that you're going to show at the end of the semester. And so you're always kind of working towards that. But in addition to that, you have like mini projects that kind of address what you're learning that week, or that kind of unit. And it's kind of staggered in such a way that those projects are things that you can then apply to your capstone project. So you'll be learning about one thing one week, and you'll do a little project based on that. And then the next week you have a deliverable for your capstone, which is related to the mini project that you did. So it was really great in the way it was staggered. So you can kind of always be applying what you were learning. And I thought that was a really effective way of doing it, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm really interested in your favorite project. So maybe you can share your screen now and tell me all about it.
Yeah, sure. So let me just get this over here. Okay, let me know if you can see it okay.
Yes, I can.
Sweet. Okay, so the project that I kind of focused on, it was a really focus on volunteering. I'm a big volunteer in my personal life, and so there was a lot of I drew a lot from my own personal experience, but then I had to make sure I was validating that with going through proper research and proper interviews. But essentially what I came up with was this prototype that allowed volunteers to be connected with an organization, and also facilitate the full process from discovery of an organization all the way through application and onboarding. So I can walk you through a little bit here. So basically the user, when they first come to the app, and keep in mind, this is a prototype, so this is not like a final design. This is just very much like early stages of, or I guess this is later stages, but this is just like a prototype to validate an idea. So the user would kind of go through here. They'd be asked some early onboarding questions. And this was very much to get an idea about like what kind of organization the volunteer would be suited for. So we asked like their name, their location, you know, what are the things that kind of inspire them. We want to make sure that volunteers are kind of matched with, or that the users matched with the organization that matters to them. So they can make some choices there. We kind of ask, you know, how much time can they dedicate? We then go into a background check. What's interesting is that a lot of organizations require a background check, and that was something that came up in my research, was that the application process was very long for a lot of people. So this was an idea of trying to like facilitate that in a much simpler way. This is something that you didn't have to do, or the users wouldn't have to do right away, but just to kind of flag it for them that this is probably something that they're going to have to get at some point. So they could skip it, or they could, if they had one, they could upload it right away. From there, I thought it was really important to be able to also apply to an organization with one tap. You know, again, going back to that whole idea of the application process, you know, there was a lot of, one user I spoke to, she actually had to print off her application and mail it in. So, which is ridiculous. She's like, I'm not doing that. So this idea of being able to connect to LinkedIn so organizations can get full access to your history, and also connect to Facebook. I thought it was really important that users could see where their friends were volunteering. And when I say I felt it was important, it was important for users to say that, to see where their friends were volunteering. That was something that really came up a lot in my interviews. So users could connect to these apps, and then from there they would be matched with an organization. So they can see here now there's a list of organizations. They've been sorted by percent to see how they've been matched. And then the user, who is Kim, I didn't really get into too much of the persona, but Kim is our persona here. So Kim can tap on an organization that she's interested in. She can find out a little bit more about them. She can see, if she's connected to Facebook, she can see which friends are there. She can also see what kind of work she's expected to do. You know, if you're volunteering at, you know, like Habitat for Humanity, you're going to be like building a house versus, you know, if you're volunteering somewhere else, you know, you may not want to build a house. So it was really important to show what kind of work they can expect too. Location is also a really big, important thing. You don't want to be, you know, taking too much out of your time to get there. Anyway, so from here, Kim could actually apply to an organization directly. So here it says just, you know, that you can apply directly, and if you want to add a short note, you can. So Kim does. She says that she's really excited, and then she can apply now, and that would send the application directly over to the organization. So here she gets kind of a notification that that's happened, and she's now taken to a state where she can see the status of her application. So from here, she can see where she is in the whole process. This was something that was really interesting in the user interviews that I did as well. A lot of the time, users would submit an application and then it would just, they wouldn't hear back, or there'd be like some weird process that they just had no idea where they were in that pipeline. So this was really important. They could also have a conversation directly with the organization, and then again, find out some more information about it. So from here, let me just skip through here. So this is the next stage. So like Kim has now received like a notification from the app. She can see that her status has moved down to the next step. So she can see that her application is in review. And then the next one, she's received a message from the organization saying like, hey, thanks for applying. We're kind of looking at your stuff, and we'll get back to you in the next few days. So it was really important to keep these conversations going during the process as well. One thing that users mentioned, like I said earlier, was that they felt like they were kind of abandoned in this process. So having this kind of conversation continuous was really important as well. So from there, Kim has seen that she now has to go for an interview, so she can actually schedule her interview right from the app as well. She's got some dates that the organization has maybe said are better, so she can choose a time and a date there, and then actually book her interview. So there's a note from Max saying like, hey, please arrive 15 minutes, ask for so-and-so, and then Kim now has an interview booked. So then she can see here that it's all been booked, and then if she needs to see any notes, she can tap on the help icon again. And then from there, there's a little bit more, like she's had her interview, it's been completed, and then she's been accepted as a volunteer. And so that's kind of how that whole process ended up going. And then, you know, the organization can reach out with further details after that. So.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's such a cool app.
Yeah, thanks.
I do volunteering as well, so yeah, it totally resonates with me as well.
Oh, nice. That's great.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about your design process. Like you've mentioned some of the user testing you've done and things like that. So maybe you can kind of walk me through a bit of that and how you kind of, you know, figured out exactly how you should design the app.
Yeah, so it's always good, you know, as designers, we're designers because we do have an instinct and we do have that kind of that thing in our gut that tells us what's a good idea, what's a bad idea. What's really important though is to validate that. You know, we can't just go on our own hunches. So early in this project, I, again, like I was mentioning, like I kind of drew this from my own personal experience as a volunteer, and I remembered back to when I was applying. So it's great to kind of start there, but then you have to validate it, right? So I kind of was like, okay, maybe this is something. So I wanted to like set forward some interviews and actually talk to people and find out if this was something, you know, maybe it was just my experience, right? So I kind of created a hypothesis and set forth to kind of invalidate that hypothesis or validate it. So from there, I interviewed several people to kind of find out their experiences. I kind of took out some key findings from those interviews and validated my hypothesis. So from at that point, you can then move into, you know, developing out a persona and kind of figuring out what are the key steps in this process that somebody's going to go through. And so building out experience maps or journey maps to seeing where you can actually intervene with good design. So that's kind of where you start, and then moving into, you know, actually once you have a task in mind, building out some more task flows and then going into your lo-fi wireframes and then taking it all the way up to UI design.
Oh, that's awesome. It sounds like a really thorough process.
Yeah, it's pretty detailed.
And then how did you decide like which tools and technologies to use throughout your design process?
Sure.
And which ones were they?
Yeah. So BrainStation is really focused on kind of teaching you what's really current. So we were using Sketch and Envision, sorry. And then later on, we moved into a little bit more high fidelity prototyping. So we looked at things like Principle and Figma. But for this, it was mostly done in Sketch and Envision for the prototype itself.
Awesome. And were those technologies you'd used before?
Sketch I had used lightly before, and Envision I had used on the side of a developer. So in my old job, design team was using Envision, and they would use that as a tool for handoff. So I was pretty familiar with Envision, and Sketch. I had some knowledge with Sketch. Like also being a developer, you do have to be involved in some of these tools as well. So I had limited knowledge with those, but moving into this, I feel much more comfortable kind of actually diving into those tools and using them.
And did you have any challenges throughout the project where you had to, you know, maybe learn something that BrainStation hadn't taught you, or overcome some other problem that you had?
I think, you know, time is always such an interesting constraint. And I don't like using time as an excuse, because time is always going to be, you know, a constraint, right? But I think I remember when I first went into figuring out my flows, I felt very like underwhelmed with what I had kind of done. I was like, am I really just doing an onboarding flow? Like that seems so simplistic, too simplistic. And I think, you know, I spoke to one of my instructors and he was like, listen, he's like, we're doing this in such a short period of time. Like, you know, give yourself some credit. Like, obviously you have probably more time in the real world, maybe less time in the real world, but it was more about like trying to learn how to be easier on myself in that process. So it wasn't so much like looking at like a tool to use or anything like that. It was more of like a introspective kind of moment that I had.
And how long did you actually have to work on it?
So you basically start working on it the first week of school. So altogether it was 3 months, but the way it's staggered, you have to move quickly, right? And you have to really think, because, you know, 3 months is kind of a long period of time, but you're also doing like 1,000 other things on top of it, right? So it seems like, you know, you're not really working on it for 3 months dedicated. You're doing all these other things. So yeah, so that was kind of a bit of a challenge too. It was kind of juggling everything on top of that. So
that's awesome. And then if you could do it all over again, is there anything you would do differently or change?
The project specifically, or anything like within the course?
The project specifically.
The project specifically? I don't know. I think I would spend more time figuring out maybe different explorations with visual identity or color. I think that was something that was really interesting, or maybe probably spending more time on accessibility and seeing, where I can go with that. Also, I would love to conduct more interviews. We conduct a few, but I think ultimately, I would love to have interviewed much more people. I think that would have been a much more helpful thing to do as well.
Cool, that makes sense. And what are your plans for the future of the project? Like, do you plan to keep working on and adding some of the things that you've been thinking about?
Maybe, I'm not sure. I think right now I might kind of just iterate on some of the design and maybe take it into a different space there. But right now I'm just focused on getting a job. So everything else is kind of taking a backseat, even though that would probably help me get a job. But
yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Oh, sure.
Like, how important do you think that being able to work on a project like this is going to be for finding a job?
It's really important. The thing that's difficult is a lot of employers are hesitant about student work. So that was like one challenge that I had in applying for jobs is you really need to make sure that you have more than just this project in your portfolio. So try to my biggest advice would be do more projects outside of school, do real life projects, make sure you get real life experience. I was really privileged in the fact that I could pull from my past work experience and build a book based on not just school project or schoolwork, but also real work. So that was really helpful in my experience. So.
That's cool. And then how is BrainStation helping you with this job hunting process? Like, are they giving you any kind of career advice or introing you to anyone?
Yeah, so they really prepare, we do a big demo day at the end of the course, and that is such an amazing experience to network with people in the industry. You can really, it's kind of your chance to show your work to people that potentially may hire you. So that was a really great thing that they did. But also post graduation, we have a alumni Slack channel where they post job postings pretty frequently. They reach out to you to see, if there's anything that you're struggling with post BrainStation. And I remember for me, I wanted more interview prep. So one of the coordinators reached out to me when we met to kind of talk about how that would work and what were my hesitations around that. So yeah, it was really helpful post grad in terms of career searching and career help.
Awesome. And do you have any particular goals in mind when it comes to finding a job?
Yeah. So when I'm trying to think if it was even before, I think when I first started the course, I listed out, the top 3 places that I wanted to work. Part of, I think when you start, you kind of list your goals for the course and kind of outside of the course, what you want to do. And so for me, one of them was getting a job at a very specific company. And I actually was just in San Francisco on Monday interviewing with them. So that was a really great thing that came out of the course as well, was being able to set some goals and actually start working towards them.
That's really exciting. Well, good luck with that job that you interviewed for. Hope you get it.
Yeah, me too.
And so you've already given a little bit of advice for other people, but I'm just wondering if you have any other advice for people who are thinking about doing a UX bootcamp like the BrainStation one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's the concept of a diploma is so ambiguous these days, right? But for me, that was really important. And I would just say that if anybody is thinking about working or relocation in the US or anything like that, you have to have a diploma. So that was the biggest pull for BrainStation for me. And I think that would be for some people, I think that's going to be really important. So I would say make sure that you know what you're getting into in terms of what you're going to get at the end of the project or at the end of the program. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would give advice to. No, that was really good. Make sure that they have good mentorship. One thing that our cohort had that was really amazing was that they did mentorship with people that worked in the industry that were, alumni from the program. So we would spend time doing critiques and reviews with them. And so that was incredibly helpful. So I would see what kind of mentorship and what kind of support that the program can also give you during and after.
That's really good advice. Awesome. Well, those are all my questions now. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about your experience or your project?
Just like the experience of being back in a classroom is incredible. Like I mentioned earlier, I kind of went into it, like it's a very humbling experience. I think as the last time I was in school, it was like maybe 12 years ago, and kind of being in the industry and working, you're just kind of like, I'm going to get A's in everything, because I'm going to do something that I'm choosing to do that I'm really passionate about. And then like, you don't get A's in everything and it's really humbling, right? And so also just being in the classroom where you're around people having that same shared experience is also an amazing thing to have. So just like embrace the craziness of a boot camp, because it is very intense. And our instructors kept saying that to us. They're like, embrace it because it's such an experience. And of course, when you're in it, you're not really thinking of that like that, right? But just I would make sure to take some deep breaths and take a step back when you need to, and just remember that you're doing it to better yourself and keep going.
That's great advice. Well, thank you so much, Zach, for sharing your experience and showing me your app. It looks really awesome.
Thank you.
And all the best for your future career. I hope you land your dream job.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was nice chatting with you.
You too.